before Abraham left for the land of Canaan. He actually passed away much later. Because if you do the calculation of the 205 years that Terach lived, and you figure out when Abraham was born, he didn't pass away till much later. So the question is, why does it say here that Terach died in Haran? So Rashi brings from the sages that it's alluding to the fact that the wicked are considered dead already in their lifetime. And since at that time Terach was a wicked man, so we're already mentioning his death long before he ever passes away. And the opposite, the righteous, they're considered alive even after their passing. So I had this idea based on this statement of the sages that based on all this, there's an allusion from this last verse here, which is in chapter 11, verses 30 and 32 in Genesis. Well, it's actually verse 32 to be exact. That this is a proof that the nations have a portion in the world to come, or I should say a potential portion in the world to come. See if you can follow my logic here. What is the meaning of the idea that the wicked in their lifetime are called dead? And what is the meaning of the idea that the righteous in their lifetime, the righteous after their passing are considered alive? So I think the simple understanding is that, that the life of the world to come is an eternal form of life. So it's a more true, or the true life. And therefore, since the wicked don't have that, already in this world, they're considered dead. On the other hand, the righteous, since they live eternally, so even after they're passing in this world, but their life in the world to come continues on, so they're considered alive. I think that's a simple explanation of the meaning of the wicked are considered dead in this world, and the righteous are considered alive even when they pass from this world. So, in other words, the idea of this is this: if a member of the nations only had this world, only had the material world, nothing else, then what does it mean to say that the wicked in this world are considered dead? No, they have the same life as any other member of the nations. They have this world, the same thing, the wicked living in this world. Why should they be considered dead? So you see that you have to conclude that the meaning of the phrase that the wicked are considered dead is because they have a potential eternal life, which they've lost, and that's why they're considered dead. While the righteous have laid a claim on eternal life, and therefore even when they pass from this world, they're considered alive. So that's my first innovative thought I wanted to share with you tonight to spice it up before we get back to our regular studies. That's number one. I don't know. I hope that any questions about that? I guess you review the videotape if you have any questions. But just once again, the idea is that from the verse that says that Terach passed away in Haran now, early on, at the age when Abraham was around 75, when he actually passed away much later, is to teach that the wicked in their lifetime are considered dead. And from that alone, we can conclude that any human being has a potential eternal life, which the wicked forfeit, and that's why they're considered dead. So here is a kind of a allusion through one of the statements of our sages that that the righteous of the nations have a portion in the eternal world to come. So that's my first thing I wanted to share, a little spice it up before we begin. And something else that came up actually in my studies something that was pointed out to me, and that is that I wanted to share with you as well. Everybody with me? It's so hard for me to tell because nobody's faces are moving. You know, a lot of people have different pictures up, and I don't know who is really there, or if everyone went to put a pizza in the microwave and I'm just sitting here by myself or something. I don't know. I could never know. But anyway, okay. Thank you. No, I see people are reacting, responding. I have you. Good, good. So listen. So it was pointed out to me that Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in his work, and I have a copy of the how shall I say, the condensed version of the summaries of Maran, which is of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and he says there, how would I describe it? It goes according to the dates, but in the 17th, of this month of Cheshvan, he says the following thing. It's very esoteric. I'm not saying you got to understand all of it, but he makes a reference to how converts are made, how mystically converts come about. And I think you may find this very fascinating. I wanted to share it with you. So he says the following. He says, paragraph 10, the charity that a person gives to a true Torah scholar greatly increases and extends the concept of clear and tranquil air. So somehow giving charity to a Torah scholar purifies the air, the environment, okay? Then when a person who knows how to speak Jewish speak, that is holy speech, utters his words, they are written and carved out in the air, and they go forth and are heard at a distance. So if someone speaks holy words of Torah, of Judaism, words they're uttered by a Torah scholar and the righteous, those words go out into the air, okay? They go into, in other words, if the air is purified by charity, then holy words can go into the air somehow, okay? Again, this is obviously a mystical stuff. Then he says, then these words are written in the books of the Gentiles, in whatever script is used in each country. So these holy words go out into the air, and then they are somehow infused into the books of the Gentiles, okay? In whatever script is used in each country. Subsequently, the Gentiles find in their own books things that contradict their faith, and consequently, they convert to Judaism. Such stories have been told about many proselytes who came to convert in this way, and it is all a result of this phenomenon. I found that unbelievably interesting because, first of all, I just know that there are a lot of you that have similar stories, that they found contradictions within the scripts of their own religions. And this is what he says. This is caused by holy speech, well, first of all, through charity, which purifies the air and then allows holy words of Torah to have an effect to somehow be imbued into, into the texts of non-Jewish books in such a way that the reader is able to pick up from the book that something is actually wrong. I mean, it's a fascinating idea. If I would just look, it's quite esoteric and it's quite confusing to understand his words. But to say it simply, I mean, what he's saying is that the good deeds of charity and saying words of Torah in one place somehow bring some purity and some type of arousal and trigger that even in these other religions, that person who studies that can see the issues and problems with them. Or to say it another way, to simply that the acts of charity and Torah study that take place in a pure manner brings converts. That brings converts. It brings people on the other side of the world to read their religion and to see contradictions and therefore come close to Torah. So it's just, I just thought I had to share that with you because, one thing is just, such an incredible idea, but also something that I had thought of myself in the past, that there was a connection between the service and the self-sacrifice of the Jewish people in keeping Torah and mitzvahs through the ages, and converts who are coming now in this late in our generation. He doesn't say exactly that either, but he's just bringing out that there is a connection between charity and pure Torah study and the awakening of the nations to Torah. Okay, any questions about any of these points? Okay, all right, we'll move on then. I just leave it there with you, and we'll move back to our book. Okay. I'm going to be ending a little bit earlier today, and that might be something permanent, as I have to leave. I'm leaving some time to get to evening services here, to our Arvit prayer services, and maybe we'll start a little earlier, or we'll just end maybe about 5 or 10 minutes earlier, one or the other. Okay. So in our book on the Noahide law, universal ethics, I think we're up to about page 183, which it states, talks about something that's always I felt was quite complex and quite confusing, which is this idea of partnership. We previously stated that the first and ideal approach to belief is the understanding that there's nothing other than God, and all other things are just, like axes in the hands of the wood carver, the wood chopper, and they don't have any real ability, real power at all. There was a dispute there among the halachic authorities if a person of the nation is obligated to have that level of belief. And if you look at the footnote 15, that's discussed that the Sefer Chinuch does have the view that the nations are obligated to have that high level of belief. There's also a reading of the Rambam and Maimonides that the nations are obligated to have such a belief. And there are others who disagree, including the Ramah in the Jewish Code of Law, and the Shulchan Aruch brings other opinions. And also there are some views of even Maimonides himself that that pure level of belief is not required, but partnership is permitted. So now we have to understand partnership. So let's begin, and you'll see that what we're going to get to is that partnership is something that may be permitted in belief, but not in action. So it's a very, very limited, carved out allowance. Let's see what it's all about. Okay, partnership, page 183. A second perspective on the relationship of God to creation is that God is seen as being in partnership with a created power or agency in creation. That is, although God is grasped as the ultimate power in creation, this other created power agency is accorded a measure of significance as a conduit for God's influence. So in other words, the idea of partnership is not that there's God and then there's another power who's, basically got just as big biceps as God has. No, that's not the idea. The idea is that it's a conduit and it's getting God's influence. It has power, it stems from God and flows from God. Okay, so then what is this partnership then? Let's see. God's authority is not negated in as much as he is seen as the major and ultimate authority over creation, including this lesser agency. At the same time, the concept of partnership does not have the degree of authenticity, as does the above discussed concept of the unity of God. This is because a partner is one who has choice, and all the entities of creation, including the greatest and most powerful agencies, in reality have no choice. So partnership believes that although these other agents, whether it be an angel whether it be the constellations, whether it be different powers in this world of fire and water, wind, whatever it may be, there's a belief that there's an understanding that these things, these different powers get all their ability and so on from God. But however, they can make their own choices. And because of that, the person has a belief in them as well. Now that's a mistake, in that these other forces cannot make a choice. There's only one being that can make a choice. As he continues, this is because the partner is one who has choice, and all the entities of creation, including the greatest and most powerful agencies, in reality have no choice. Only the human being who, like the rest of creation, is in every moment recreated and sustained by God, has free choice. But that does not empower him or her in any way to compel God to do anything, but rather only to merit to channel divinely granted powers. Okay? So, through his choice, he can channel divinely granted and power, but otherwise, also, he really can't accomplish anything. His ability to make a choice and everything else stems from God. And obviously, even that ability to make a choice is being given by him, by God, at every single moment. However, all the other creatures, angels, animals, the stars, the sun, the moon, they all in reality have no choice. Okay? So therefore, this idea of partnership is actually a mistake. It's incorrect. It's incorrect. Because the person who believes in partnership believes there's a point of separation in which these different powers can make independent choices, and therefore there's a reason to believe in them and request of them certain things, because they have the power to choose what to do with the energy they're given. So it's kind of like if you were to believe that money put in a bank account, can then by the bankers be given out to whoever they want, even though it's not their money. So, that's basically what this person is thinking if he believes in partnership. He believes that different entities are given power from God, and then they can choose what to do with that power. That's actually incorrect. That's exactly what he says here. All right, so paragraph 2 over on page 183. The view of the partnership with God, of major agencies and powers, at least acknowledges God as the ultimate power in creation. So this partnership approach still recognizes God as the ultimate power. Moreover, the ultimate reality that everything is totally nullified to God is a perception which is not readily manifest to all humanity. So because it's difficult for people to understand the idea of being fully nullified to God, therefore there's been an allowance not to punish people for having a belief in this partnership idea, because the idea of nullification is too hard for people to grasp. I guess part of that would have to be because other entities appear to be making choices, even though they're really not. And because of that appearance, so there's this allowance given in the Torah for the nations to have a lesser level of belief. Again, that's according to this opinion, in many opinions. Okay. For these reasons, partnership, in quotes, is permissible according to the principal view in Noahide law. So again, our author is telling you that the principal view says this is permitted for Noahide, for Ben Noach. Now, traditionally, and now we're going to turn the page, it is called partnering in the name of heaven with something else. Partnering of the name of heaven with something else. Whilst it is not permitted to worship that power in conjunction with God, for that would in fact be treating it as an independent power. The Noahide law may associate it with the transcendent God. This permission or forbearance of partnering God with something else in thought and speech is the baseline position of Noahide law. You catch that? I don't know if you caught all that, but we're splitting some hairs over here, and we're saying that you're not permitted to worship this other power in conjunction with God. Okay, So what's the forbearance for? What is this allowance? He says a forbearance, permission, partnering God with something else in thought and speech. Thought and speech. Okay? In the baseline position of Noahide law, in the 17, in the footnote, he quotes the Ramah Shulchan Aruch, that's a code of Jewish law, the first section of the first book of the first volume, chapter 156. So that's what's brought there. I mean, it's very complex. So we're saying, if in the person's mind and in his speech, person has a belief in this other power, but doesn't worship it, that can be permitted, but worship is not permitted. Okay, the problem I have with this is that there are opinions. I mean, this is just a question I have, which I don't know how to answer, because it's well known that there are authorities who say that Christianity is a form of this partnership. The problem is that we just read that this partnership, in which would be permitted for the nations and not prohibited, is not a permission or license for worship. It's only a permission or license. In other words, it's not really a permission. It's more a forbearance. It's like, it could be that humanity may not have evolved enough to understand the idea of God, of there being none other than him. And therefore, if people have a belief in there being God, but there's other powers as well, then God will put up with it. But they can't actually worship that other thing. Well, Christianity isn't that what it's all about? Worshiping a partner? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That Ross is shaking his head. I hope he shares with us some of his thoughts. I'd like to know what he's thinking. And anyone else? Timothy, I think you had your hand up. Go ahead.
You're right about, well, first of all, thank you, Rabbi. It's good to see you. Sorry I missed last week. I couldn't help it.
Okay. Good to see you as well.
So I've been trying to understand these things. And one of the studies that I did, I saw where a goy that wants to become a ger toshiva it's not his fault what he learned from his forefathers. So, he was raised up with these other kind of thoughts or documents. But if he wants to be part of Israel and be able to live there in Israel, then that's when he's got his, in Israel, not here, but if you were in Israel, that's when you got to go in front of 3 people in the bit den, and you got to take on the 7 Noahide laws, and then they're going to check you out to make sure that you're true to your word and what you're saying. So that kind of lines up with what you just said. They could be thinking about that because it's not really like their fault. That's what they were taught to do. But if they come to realize the truth because of Torah and change, that's good. And I think that was kind of like what you were just saying. Is that correct, what I said?
I mean, I think what you're getting at is, if I understand you correctly, is that there's justification for the leniency because of people's backgrounds and the way that they were brought up and their perceptions. And yeah, I agree with that. I also think just in general, it's really hard this idea of belief is hard for all of us in the sense that the way we see the world with our eyes, there seems to be a lot of independent actors. Most people think this way, meaning to say people think God created things and then things just move on their own. When people think of a creator, they think of, basically the God molded things, into, clay, into ceramics, and then it's its own thing. I think most people view that way, that God is a creator, and then things become independent after his creation. I don't think most people, unless they study this, really realize that the intent of Torah is to say, no. Everything is constantly plugged in. I mean, unless you study this, you don't really understand this. Even in other words, if you were to hear, even I'm talking about even theology, the God's the creator. Let's say you were told at some point, parents, or even you just read about it in some simple book, okay, that creationism. Oh, so that, people who are religious believe that God created the world. What does that mean he created? Well, he made it, now it's on its own, and he's up there in heaven somewhere, and the world is turning around and all everything. That's how you'd usually understand it. To come in and to understand that, no, he's constantly, he's basically the electricity and everybody needs his socket is something that you need to meditate on and kind of be told at first, because God is so hidden that it's not the way things appear to us. Things appear to us as partnership. That's what he's saying. That's why it's allowed by Judaism, because we want to, it just being fair, because and the way the world looks, it looks like it is a partnership, just meaning to say, as I just said, that God, the power stems from God. He makes things and then they move around and do what they want. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. And that's really what partnership is. And therefore, it's wrong to punish, people for that. Now, the Jewish people that had their revelation and they witnessed the going out of Egypt and the event that the prophetic event at Sinai. So their demands of them are different because of what they experienced, and the tradition they got from their forefathers. But others can't be expected to, not see things the way that God, the illusion that God has created. God made this illusion himself. So he can't then expect the people to, see through it without instruction. I think that's the most logical way to approach this. Yet we're still saying, no, you can't worship these things though. You can't worship them. You can only think that they have some power and maybe mention them as a power in your speech, but not worship. That's not allowed. So, and that's really my problem. And this is really a theoretical problem, because if there are authorities who say Christianity is a partnership, I have no right, I don't have the authority or knowledge to disagree with them. I'm just posing it as an academic question that, based on what I know of Christianity, based on what I just read and studied, it doesn't seem to jive that Christianity is a viable partnership, because you are worshiping the partner. But maybe something I'm missing here.